My best friend slept with my brother behind my back, then had the audacity to act like it was no big deal and demand my forgiveness. I never thought my best friend would be the one to betray me. But she did. And the worst part? She acted like it was no big deal, like I should just get over it and forgive her immediately. But how do you forgive someone when they've completely destroyed your trust? For context, I'm 25F, and my ex-best friend, let's call her Tasha, 26F, has been in my life since we were kids. We grew up together. We were inseparable. Sleepovers, inside jokes, making dumb plans about how we'd grow old and be those cool wine-drinking aunts together. She was like family to me. So yeah, I trusted her with everything. And my older brother Nick, we weren't super close, but we had a good relationship. He was the typical annoying but protective older brother, always giving me crap but also having my back when it mattered. And that's why what happened hurt so much. Because they both knew how much this would mess me up. And they did it anyway. The night everything fell apart started out normal. Tasha came over to my apartment for a movie night, just like we'd done a million times before. We got snacks, put on some crappy rom-com, and just hung out like usual. Halfway through the movie, she got a text and went weirdly quiet. I asked if something was wrong, and she just smiled and shook her head. I didn't think much of it, but looking back, that was the moment I should have known. A little while later, she got up and said she had to make a quick phone call. Again, weird, but I didn't push. I figured she was dealing with some guy drama or something. Except when she came back, she was acting different. Nervous. Fidgety. And when I asked who she was talking to, she lied to my face. "Oh, just my mom," she said, forcing a smile. I didn't think much of it at the time, but an hour later, she suddenly made up an excuse to leave. She never bailed on movie nights. Ever. But that night, she practically ran out the door, and I had no idea why. It wasn't until the next morning that everything made sense. I woke up to a text from my brother. "Nick, hey, we need to talk. Please don't freak out." My stomach dropped. Nick and I weren't the kind of siblings who needed to talk about things. So for him to text me out of nowhere with a warning like that, I already knew it was bad. I called him immediately. And when he picked up, he sounded guilty as hell. "Okay, before I say anything," he started, "just know that I didn't plan for this to happen." I sat up in bed, fully awake now. "What the hell are you talking about?" He hesitated, then, in the quietest voice ever, he mumbled, "Tasha came over last night." I froze. "What?" She texted me out of nowhere," he said. Asked if I wanted to grab a drink. I didn't say anything, because I already knew where this was going, and I wasn't ready to hear it. "She came over," he continued. "We drank a little, talked, and then—" One thing led to another. I felt like I was going to throw up. "You're joking," I whispered. Silence. Then, "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I screwed up." I hung up. I couldn't process it. I just sat there staring at my phone, trying to wrap my head around what I had just heard. Because Tasha, my best friend, had left my place, gone straight to my brother's apartment and slept with him. And then? She didn't say a damn word to me. I needed answers. So I texted her, me. "We need to talk, now." She read it immediately. And then? She left me on read, for the first time ever. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at my phone, waiting for a reply, but after 3 hours of silence, I finally lost it. I called her. She didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. Finally, on the third try, she answered, and before I could even say anything, she sighed and said, "I was going to tell you." I saw red. "Oh, were you?" I snapped. "When exactly? After the wedding?" She groaned. "Come on, don't be dramatic." I almost threw my phone. "Tasha," I said through gritted teeth, "you slept with my brother." She sighed again, like I was being so unreasonable. "It just happened," she said. "We were drinking, we were vibing, and it just—" I cut her off. "Oh my God, do not say it just happened. That's the most cliché excuse ever." She went quiet. And then she hit me with, "Well, it's not like I cheated on you." I couldn't believe my ears. "Excuse me?" I hissed. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Dude, you're acting like I betrayed you or something. It was just sex." I almost screamed. Just sex? Just sex? I took a deep breath, trying to control the rage boiling in my chest. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You, my supposed best friend, snuck around behind my back, hooked up with my brother, and then lied about it? And now you want me to just be okay with it?" Tasha groaned. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you right away." "Oh, so you were planning to tell me?" I shot back. Or were you just hoping I'd never find out? She hesitated, and that told me everything. I shook my head. I can't believe you. She let out a frustrated sigh. Okay, whatever. I'm sorry. Can we just move on now? I blinked. Move on? I repeated. Yeah, she said. I mean, I didn't kill someone, I just hooked up with Nick. It's not like it's a big deal. I felt my hands shaking. Then I took a deep breath and said the words that changed everything. We're done. Hanging up on Tasha should have felt good. I should have felt relieved that I finally cut her off, that I didn't let her manipulate me into forgiving her. But honestly, I just felt exhausted. Because after years of friendship, after everything we'd been through, she really thought she could just sweep this under the rug like it was nothing, like she hadn't completely betrayed me. And the worst part? She wasn't done yet. The next morning I woke up to a long-ass text from Tasha. I stared at my phone for a second, debating whether I even wanted to read it. But curiosity got the best of me, and honestly, I should have just deleted it, because the moment I started reading, I felt my blood pressure skyrocket. Tasha had written this long-winded excuse about how she didn't mean to hurt me and how she thought I'd be more mature about this. She even threw in some crap about how it wasn't a big deal because she and Nick were both consenting adults. Oh, and the best part, she had the nerve to say she felt hurt by my reaction. Like, seriously? She betrayed me, lied to my face, then expected me to comfort her because she didn't like how I handled it? I had to reread the message twice just to process the level of delusion. I took a deep breath and started typing. I told her, straight up, that she wasn't the victim here. That she had gone behind my back, slept with my brother, and then lied to me about it. That I didn't owe her my forgiveness. And if she really thought I was going to just get over it like nothing happened, then she clearly never respected me in the first place. I hit send. And a minute later, she replied with, "Lao okay, have a nice life." And then, she blocked me. I stared at my phone, blinking. And then, I started laughing, because I wasn't even mad anymore. I was just done. But while things with Tasha were officially over, there was still one person left to deal with. Nick. I hadn't spoken to him since he confessed, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to. But after a few days of ignoring his texts, he finally showed up at my apartment. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, looking all guilty and awkward, I felt my stomach twist. Because as much as I was furious at him, he was still my brother, and that made everything so much worse. He asked if I was going to let him in. I just stood there, arms crossed, debating whether I even wanted to hear what he had to say. I stepped aside and let him in, but I didn't say a word. He sat down on the couch, rubbed the back of his neck, and let out a deep breath like he was bracing himself for impact. Then he finally looked at me and said, "Okay, look, I messed up. Yeah, no kidding." I didn't say anything. I just waited, because at this point, I wanted to hear what kind of excuse he was about to pull out of his ass. Nick said he hadn't talked to Tasha in months, and then out of nowhere, she texted him, asking if he wanted to grab a drink. He admitted he thought it was weird at first, but he figured maybe she just wanted advice about something. I had to fight the urge to roll my eyes, because really, what kind of advice was she looking for? How to betray your best friend in record time? He said they met up, had a few drinks, and she started flirting with him. He swore up and down that he didn't plan for it to happen, that he wasn't even sure how things escalated the way they did. That's when I lost it. I told him that he knew exactly how things escalated because he let them. I asked him if he ever stopped to think about me before making that choice. He sighed and ran a hand over his face, like he didn't want to answer, but I already knew. He didn't. Not once. Because if he had, he would have stopped himself. Nick finally admitted he knew it was wrong, that the second it happened he felt like absolute garbage, but he still did it, and that was the problem. For the first time he actually looked like he felt guilty, not just because he got caught, but because he knew he had really hurt me. Then he apologized, and unlike Tasha's fake, half-assed apology, I actually believed him. Because he wasn't making excuses, he wasn't trying to gaslight me into thinking it wasn't a big deal, he was just owning up to it. That didn't mean I forgave him, but it did mean I could at least start to move forward. I told him I needed time, that I wasn't going to cut him out of my life completely, but I also wasn't just going to pretend nothing happened. He nodded, said he understood, and told me he was done with Tasha. Apparently, the second she realized he wasn't interested in dating her, she ghosted him, which, honestly, was hilarious. She thought she was about to secure a whole-ass relationship out of this mess, and instead, she got nothing. It was almost poetic. So, what happened next? Tasha never tried to contact me again. She knew she had burned that bridge for good. Nick and I? It took time, but we eventually went back to normal, because at the end of the day, he was still my brother. But Tasha, she was nothing to me. And honestly, I didn't miss her one bit. Because real friends, they don't betray you. Cutting Tasha off should have been the end of it. I thought once I blocked her, that would be the last I'd hear from her. But of course, I underestimated her ability to be an absolute menace. Because instead of just accepting that she was a horrible friend and moving on, she decided to turn it into a whole damn show. And unfortunately for her, I wasn't playing along. For the first few days after cutting her off, things were quiet. Nick and I were still a little weird around each other, but at least he had the decency to own up to his mistakes. Tasha, on the other hand, silence. No texts, no calls, no sudden misunderstandings where she tried to gaslight me into thinking I was wrong. And honestly, that should have been my first red flag. Because Tasha wasn't the kind of person to just walk away from drama. She was the kind of person who thrived off of it. And as it turns out, she had just been waiting to pull her next move. A week after I cut her off, I got a text from a mutual friend. It was a screenshot of a group chat one I wasn't even in, where Tasha had been running her mouth about me, and bro, I have never seen someone rewrite history so fast. Apparently I was a toxic, jealous friend who was just looking for a reason to hate her. She said I was controlling, that I had always been obsessed with who she talked to, and that I was just mad because I secretly had feelings for Nick. I nearly threw my phone, because seriously? This girl went from, "it just happened," to, "I'm the victim," in record time. I immediately called the friend who sent me the screenshot. "What the hell is this?" I asked. She sighed. "Yeah, Tasha's been talking a lot of crap about you." I ran a hand down my face. "What exactly is she saying?" "She's basically telling people you flipped out for no reason. That she and Nick hooked up because they had undeniable chemistry, and you just couldn't handle it." I laughed out loud. Undeniable chemistry? Like this was some romance novel and not a trashy backstabbing situation she created herself? "She also said you were always really possessive of her," my friend continued. "Like you didn't want her to have any other close friendships." I blinked. Possessive? She literally slept with my brother. "I know," she said. "That's why I sent you the screenshots. Because she's lying to everyone and it's disgusting." At first I thought about responding, calling her out in the group chat, exposing her for the liar and manipulator that she was. But then I realized I didn't have to, because everyone else was already seeing through her. One by one, people started calling her out. Some of them had been around long enough to know that I wasn't controlling or jealous. Some of them just had common sense and knew that her story didn't add up. And others? They had their own experiences with Tasha stabbing them in the back, and now they were finally seeing her for who she really was. A few days later, another friend texted me, "Tasha's freaking out because people are calling her out for what she did to you. She's saying she lost everything because of one little mistake." Little mistake? She really thought this was just some tiny, forgettable thing? Like she hadn't completely destroyed my trust? I just shook my head and laughed, because at the end of the day, this was all her own doing. She made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. Meanwhile, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. Without Tasha's constant drama weighing me down, I had so much more energy to focus on things that actually mattered. I started going out more, reconnecting with old friends I hadn't seen in forever. I threw myself into work, picked up some new hobbies, and just enjoyed my life without having to worry about someone stabbing me in the back. And you know what? It was amazing. 'Cause looking back, I realized that my friendship with Tasha had been draining me for years. It wasn't just this one betrayal, it was the constant lies, the manipulative behavior, the way she always made everything about herself. This whole situation just forced me to wake up, and honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. One day I ran into an old friend who used to be close with Tasha. We hadn't talked in years, but she pulled me aside and said, "I heard what happened with you and Tasha, and honestly, you dodged a bullet." I asked her what she meant, and she told me that Tasha had always been like this, that she had a history of using people, lying to them, and then playing the victim when things blew up in her face. That our falling out wasn't surprising, because it was only a matter of time before she betrayed me too. And that's when I knew I had made the right decision. Because sometimes, the people we think we can trust the most, they're the ones who are just waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back. So, what happened to Tasha? Well, she ended up completely isolating herself. Because the thing about people like her, they eventually run out of people to manipulate. She lost most of our mutual friends. She tried making new ones, but apparently her reputation followed her. Last I heard, she moved to a different city, trying to get a fresh start, and honestly, I don't care, because the moment I cut her out of my life, I started thriving, and that's all that really matters. So, if you're out there dealing with a toxic friend like Tasha, let them go. Don't waste your time trying to fix them or waiting for them to change, because some people, they're just not worth it. And trust me, your life will be so much better without them. How she tried to turn our mutual friends against me just because she couldn't handle being held accountable. And just like that, all the nostalgia, it disappeared. The more time passed, the more I realized just how toxic our friendship had been. This wasn't just about her hooking up with Nick. That was just the final straw. Looking back, I saw all the red flags I had ignored for years. The way she always made everything about herself, how she would guilt-trip me whenever I called her out on something, the way she thrived off drama and loved stirring up conflict, how she would badmouth other friends behind their backs, and yet I never thought she'd do it to me. Spoiler alert, she did. Cutting her off was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. One of the biggest changes, I suddenly had so much more energy. I hadn't even realized how mentally exhausting it was to be around someone like her. Without her constant drama, I felt lighter. I started focusing on things that actually made me happy. I reconnected with old friends, the ones Tasha had slowly pushed away over the years. I went out more, I picked up new hobbies, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually living my own life instead of constantly putting out Tasha's fires. And the best part, the people who really mattered, they stuck around. Once Tasha's lies started falling apart, most of our mutual friends saw right through her. One by one, they started reaching out to me. Some of them apologized for believing her at first. Others just wanted to check in and let me know that they were on my side. And honestly, that meant more to me than anything, because it proved that I wasn't the problem. Tasha was. And the second people saw her true colors, they wanted nothing to do with her. Meanwhile, Tasha, she wasn't doing so great. She tried making new friends, but her reputation followed her. People talk, and word spread fast about how she had stabbed me in the back and then tried to play the victim. She ended up moving to a new city, probably hoping for a fresh start, and honestly, good for her, because I didn't care. I wasn't keeping tabs on her or waiting for karma to strike. I wasn't hoping she'd regret what she did or come crawling back with some half-assed apology. I had moved on. And that, how she tried to turn our mutual friends against me just because she couldn't handle being held accountable. And just like that, all the nostalgia, it disappeared. The more time passed, the more I realized just how toxic our friendship had been. This wasn't just about her hooking up with Nick. That was just the final straw. Looking back, I saw all the red flags I had ignored for years. The way she always made everything about herself, how she would guilt-trip me whenever I called her out on something, the way she thrived off drama and loved stirring up conflict, how she would badmouth other friends behind their backs, and yet I never thought she'd do it to me. Spoiler alert, she did. Cutting her off was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. One of the biggest changes, I suddenly had so much more energy. I hadn't even realized how mentally exhausting it was to be around someone like her. Without her constant drama, I felt lighter. I started focusing on things that actually made me happy. I reconnected with old friends, the ones Tasha had slowly pushed away over the years. I went out more. I picked up new hobbies, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually living my own life instead of constantly putting out Tasha's fires. And the best part? The people who really mattered, they stuck around. Once Tasha's lies started falling apart, most of our mutual friends saw right through her. One by one, they started reaching out to me. Some of them apologized for believing her at first. Others just wanted to check in and let me know that they were on my side. And honestly, that meant more to me than anything, because it proved that I wasn't the problem. Tasha was. And the second people saw her true colors, they wanted nothing to do with her. Meanwhile, Tasha, she wasn't doing so great. She tried making new friends, but her reputation followed her. People talk, and word spread fast about how she had stabbed me in the back and then tried to play the victim. She ended up moving to a new city, probably hoping for a fresh start. And honestly, good for her, because I didn't care. I wasn't keeping tabs on her or waiting for karma to strike. I wasn't hoping she'd regret what she did or come crawling back with some half-assed apology. I had moved on, and that was the best revenge of all.